Good morning. Sabah al-khair. We're very happy to have you back and to start this very important session. And since yesterday, we've been hearing a lot about Iraq, the situation in Iraq, what can be done with the new government, etc. But I think it's important for us to talk about the international partners and their priorities and perspectives when it comes to all the crises that we have had in Iraq in the last few years. I'm very honored to be on this esteemed panel. With us today is Alina Romanowski, the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq. Welcome. And we have with us also the Italian Ambassador to Iraq, Maurizio Greganti. Nice to meet you. And also, thank you for the ambassador to the European Union, or from the European Union, Ville Varjola. I'm sorry, I kept on practicing it, but I just couldn't get it.
It's Varjola.
Varjola. So welcome and thank you so much. As we all know, and there's been a lot of talk since yesterday about how Iraq adopted a new constitution in 2005. It was a democratic constitution, and we have been working in the last couple of decades to establish a democracy. It's a fairly new democracy compared to other democracies, but the road to building this democracy has been riddled with many challenges. And we have had many issues when it came to state building and when it came to nation building projects. We have had wars, we have had the interfighting, we had the inner and the outer fighting that is coming. We have the threat that keeps on coming from the outside of our borders. And also, we have had many issues, economic issues, and what we saw recently as well in terms of the corruption that has plagued our system. And all of this has led to fragmentation in our community and in our society, and also a loss of social cohesion. And we saw this happening, or we saw it in the last elections when we had a really low turnout if you compare it to the previous elections and what has happened. And we also have had many issues in terms of negotiations between Baghdad and Erbil, and also now what we're facing in terms of climate change and the drying up of the rivers and what is happening from our neighboring states where they're actually closing down the water supplies to Iraq. But despite all of this, you are still here and you continue to support Iraq. Some may argue that the support is not enough, but I think it's important for us to talk and discuss what your goals are and what your objectives are in the coming few years, especially now that we are seeing the formation of a new government. Mr. Sudani's government, some are predicting, and yesterday there was a lot of talk about the crystal ball and what the predictions are for the new Iraq, etc. Something that is going to be successful, some others think that it may not be. I would be very interested in hearing from each and every one of you, and I will start with you, Madam Ambassador, to find out what your country's goals and objectives are for the next few years, and what are your commitments to Iraq in the next few years. So please go ahead.
Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure for me to be part of this conference and to have a chance to talk about, as you said, U.S. interests and priorities here in Iraq, but also in Iraqi Kurdistan region. Thanks, Tanya, for moderating this important session. I think you're a perfect person to introduce all of us and continue the conversation. And it's also really a pleasure for me to join my colleagues, Ambassador Varjola and Ambassador Greganti. We work very closely together in Baghdad to think about how, as friends of Iraq and the Iraqi people, we can advance our interests, much of which overlap. And this is the mutual support club here, part of it anyway. So it's good to be with them on the panel. I also really want to express my appreciation to the Middle East Research Institute and Professor Al-Adin for inviting me to participate, but also, most importantly, for gathering so many people here to talk about issues that are really key Your annual event has a reputation that's well beyond Iraq and Iraqi Kurdistan region, and so I think every year it gets better and better, as you say. So again, thanks a lot for that. Let me also just say that your timing couldn't have been better, whether you actually planned it or not, and you're responsible for single-handedly for forming a government here in Iraq. I don't know, but it certainly was. The timing is really fortunate, as we all, I think, stand at the cusp of ushering a new and empowered Iraqi government, more than a year after what many considered to be the most credible and technically sound election since 2005. Let me talk a little bit about how the United States sees this going forward. We look forward to a collaborative relationship with the new Iraqi government. It's guided and undergirded by the 2008 Strategic Framework Agreement. Iraq, including Iraqi Kurdistan region, is a strategic partner of the United States, and it plays an important role in the broader region. Just to answer, I think, a little bit your question, or at least your inference, the United States, as you know, is not going anywhere, is not going away from this region. I think the President made it very clear several times that the United States is here in the region, we have partners in the region, and we're going to stay in this region. So if there's any doubt in anybody's mind, I just want to reiterate that and calm everyone, because I know there's a lot of discussion about that. We do have a long-term commitment in this region, and partnering with the people and the government of Iraq to advance our many shared priorities is important. As I was saying earlier, the 2008 Strategic Agreement it really has laid the foundation for even more robust cooperation in areas of education, in economics, in climate, in culture. And so we have a foundational document that we believe has the flexibility and covers many of the areas including in the security sector, that we can continue to advance. We're going to remain a steadfast partner, as I said, as Iraq, and particularly this new government and Prime Minister Soudani's government plan combats corruption, undertakes economic reform, creates new jobs. And that means trying to find a way to promote a vibrant private sector, which many, I think, are quite skeptical that can happen here. And we're going to take a positive view and see if we can help to do that. We're going to continue to and ramp up our effects of climate change. Climate change is a global challenge. And I think Iraq has been particularly hard hit by it. So if we can energize our interlocutors, our businesses, and our policies to support and to look at ways that we can mitigate this with the new Iraqi government, we will be all in, and I think along with our European colleagues as well and others. Very important. Safeguarding strong official government security institutions. That is very important, and we really encourage the new government to try to tackle that. And obviously another area that we want to continue our work is with Iraq and the Iraqi security forces ensuring the enduring defeat of ISIS. We've welcomed Prime Minister Soudani's statements that his new government will focus on anti-corruption, on security, on economic reform, on jobs, Iraqi sovereignty, and climate change. So I think we have at least a very good overlap of priorities and interests. But I will say both Prime Minister Soudani, President Rashid, and the new government will need to translate those words into actions that deliver meaningful results for the Iraqi people. Their actions will also determine the breadth and depth of the U.S.-Iraqi relationship. I think the potential exists for a very productive relationship if they choose to pursue it, and we are ready to work with them in supporting that. So how is this relevant here to the Iraqi Kurdistan region? I think this region plays a critically important role in the success and in the failure of Iraq's new government. For Iraq as a whole to succeed, Baghdad and Erbil need to work together, find shared solutions to long-standing disputes, and within the Iraqi Kurdistan region, it will be important for our Kurdish friends to get their house in order. Unity at home here will only strengthen their voice in Baghdad and will also prevent outsiders from coming in and using disputes and disagreements as another way to destabilize this important region and this important country. So I'm just going to close, and just briefly as an opening, is that despite the many uncertainties, the challenging, the questions facing this new government and the Iraqi people, we think this is really an opportunity for change and for progress. It's important that we are in a position to help support the new government, help them understand our priorities, where we can work, and hopefully find partners in the new government. And we're looking forward to being able to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tanya, and keep going. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ambassador, I think that you've been in Iraq for a few months longer than Madam Ambassador, and I think you probably have had a few more rounds meeting with the different sides and the different political parties, etc. And I'm sure that this is one of the questions that come to you guys as well, in terms of Italy's commitment towards Iraq and especially to this new government and what is going to happen. So the floor is yours for a few minutes to tell us about that.
Thank you very much, Tanya. And thank you very much, first of all, to Professor Al-Aldin and to MERI for this occasion to be here. For me, it's a pleasure and an honor, and I'm very happy to be in this panel with my very good colleagues and friends, Alina and Ville. As you said, this is a kind of mutual support society. And yes, I've been here almost for 1 year now, and I think, as Alina said, this is really the right moment to have this forum, because we have finally a government, institutions in place in Baghdad after 1 year, after the elections, which were well managed, very well managed, but we needed some time to get here. So this is a very important moment, I would say, and we are really happy to start working with the new government, with the new president, as we have always done with successive Iraqi governments. Italy has always been here in Iraq, always supporting this country well before the change of regime, but all the more after the change of regime. We've been here with different levels, and I will elaborate on this. We have consolidated, I would say, very solid relationship with Iraq, friendship, and we have every interest in Iraq succeeding. This region, the Middle East, is very important, is key for Italy, a country which is in the center of the Mediterranean, very close to the Middle East. And Iraq is a very important partner. And we have seen in history that the stability of this country is the stability of the whole region. On the other side, if there is instability here, it has consequences for the whole region. So this is very important. I got some questions. It's quite of a coincidence, I would say, that in Italy also we have a new government, more or less at the same time as the new Iraqi government. We had elections on September 25th, And we have a new government on starting, that is sworn on October 22nd. And for the first time in our history, the Prime Minister is a woman. So this is also a very important landmark in our politics. I mean, we are at the beginning, at the very beginning, but I can assure you that there will be no change in our policy towards the Middle East and in Iraq. There is no question, because as I said, this is a good relationship, and the support to Iraq is very important for us, and this is a long-standing fundamental priority of our foreign policy. And this is, I mean, this has been verified many times, because we have had since 2003 different governments, right, left, center, and so that was always the case. So we will continue our support, and of course, when we speak about stability, we have every interest in the success of the democratic model in Iraq, which is very important, and stability is linked to this. We are very much convinced about this. Sometimes the process can be very long, as we have seen here. But nonetheless, we are convinced that democratic institutions, with all the challenges that Iraq is facing, they are still the best guarantee that the best recipe to get stability and in long-term prosperity. As I said, we are supporting Iraq in several ways, and maybe I can, go on later in more detail with your questions.
I'm sure in the questions, yes, definitely we'll go to that. So thank you, and definitely I think this is quite helpful. Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Varjola, as the ambassador to the EU, obviously it's a little bit different in terms of their situation where they're representing one country. They can really talk about one very particular or one straight policy towards Iraq and what it is that they're going to do. But obviously, I'm sure with the EU, it's a little bit different. So it would be interesting for us to hear what the EU's commitment is going to be with Iraq, and in terms of also facing the crises that we have seen in the many decades ago, or the last 2 decades.
Many thanks, Tanya, and of course many thanks for the organizers for having me here. Also, I guess it's one of the friendliest panels I've probably ever been to, because of the kind words from Alina and Maurizio. But perhaps I should start by saying that, of course, the European Union as such invites quite a lot of incomprehension. And if you're part of that incomprehension or feel the same, it's okay, because many Europeans feel the same way. But at the same time, we're actually achieving quite a lot of things, and I think that some of the peculiarities or particularities of the European Union are worth pointing out. I think the first observation would be that we are a collection of democratic societies. And this means that our political leadership reacts, let's say, to shifts in popular opinion. It's also true that the European publics are very sensitive about what's going on in the world. And this is also the reason why there's considerable sympathy for Iraq and the Kurdistan region in the old continent. And this is also reflected in the mentalities and the objectives of our policy. But I don't think I can underscore enough the democratic nature of our societies, because this translates directly into foreign policy objectives on the field. Now, we see Iraq as a friendly country, and certainly this has something to do with the fact that Europe as well was actually built on the ruins of war. There is this sympathy, this affinity for people who have shared experiences, and of course I've felt them firsthand myself earlier this year when I visited some of the sites of the atrocities committed under the dictatorship. It's also true that, speaking of dictatorship, it is true that many of our member states quite recently actually have become democracies. It's not such a long time ago, and they value democracy in a very fundamental and personal way. Of course, as Maurizio mentioned, we have a stake in Iraq's stability and social progress because precisely many of the issues that have been there in the past have a very direct influence on us, on Europe. And this may then be translated into international terrorism. It could be, of course, uncontrolled migration. It could be other issues, of course, as well as we have seen disruptions in energy supplies. But this means that on a very fundamental level, there is an alignment of interests between the EU and those of Iraq and Iraqis. And this, of course, helps explain the quite considerable resources that we as the European Union have mobilized in order to help Iraq. We are members of the Global Coalition Against Daesh, but besides that, the EU institutions have mobilized something like 1.5 billion euros since 2003 to help Iraq move forward and develop its democracy. Of course, if you take all the member states along, then it will be much more than that. Now, the EU's objectives in Iraq are very clear and transparent. We are here to support the country's sovereignty. We are here to support democratic governance take root in this country. We wish to see a more prosperous Iraq with more investment and trade with us. And also, we have greatly appreciated the role Iraq has taken as a bridge builder in the region. For instance, through the Baghdad Conference and the Iran-Saudi dialogue. And obviously, we would like these to continue. It's also true that for these reasons, we welcome the formation of the Al-Sudani government. Of course, as the international community, we need a partner. Iraq needs reform, as Alina pointed out. And we are looking forward to strengthening this relationship. And this is to continue on the path that HRVP Borrell, when he was on visit here last year, called an upward trajectory. So this also means that we will continue to support the government's reform efforts. And as you may know, we are also here with the EU advisory mission, which is looking into the security sector reform and providing strategic advice. Perhaps just two shocks that I would like to mention, which has fundamentally changed European perspectives on the world lately. Now, the first one is obviously COVID. When COVID struck, we realized that many of the protective gear that we needed were actually manufactured somewhere else, and there were disruptions in the supply chains, and as a result, we were deprived of these as well then later on vaccines. Now, we addressed this with EU-wide action, meaning that the European Union became the only instance in Europe which was actually buying vaccines on a bigger scale. And this was to avoid a situation where the member states would actually compete over those resources. Now, on top of that, to address the economic impact of COVID, we actually mobilized something like 800 billion euros worth of investment, which is unprecedented in the EU. So this is just to tell you that the EU is on the move. It's also something that is benefiting the whole world because we are some of the biggest supporters of the COVAX initiative, which, for instance, provided 6 million vaccines to Iraq. Then, of course, there's the other, the elephant in the room, which is Russia's war on Ukraine. Now, this has shaken us very deeply. It has shaken the international order. And of course, we are standing together with the Ukrainians in order to support them. Now, of course, we have called for the end of these hostilities, and of course, the respect for Ukraine's borders. But I think it's worthwhile reflecting a little bit what this means for the European Union and its policies, because it also has an impact on Iraq. Now, we all know that the war has affected food prices. They have gone up. And now Russia has decided to rip up this agreement brokered by the UN to actually keep the food flowing from Ukraine. Now, we are still hopeful that the agreement can be salvaged. But of course, this war has to come to an end in order to return to normality. But perhaps more importantly, it has shaken us on the issue of energy security. And we are looking at this issue these days in a less forgiving light. Now, on the one hand, we are diversifying our supplies when it comes to natural gas, but we are also, and perhaps more importantly, stepping up our efforts in energy transition, thus also addressing climate change. And we will never, ever be again in a situation where our autonomy of action is compromised by our dependence on energy supplies. And any doubts about the security of those supplies will simply precipitate our efforts to decarbonize.
Mr. Ambassador?
Sure. Maybe just one more thing.
Okay.
I know I've been a little bit long. In this context, we also welcome, of course, new partnerships. These partnerships are important because it helps us address climate change. I should just mention Global Gateway, which is a novel initiative that the EU is taking actually in conjunction with the United States in order to help countries with connectivity, things like transport networks, energy networks, digital networks, while of course safeguarding health and these sorts of things.
Great.
I think I'm done here. Well, thanks for your patience.
We definitely have many questions for you, but before I go to the audience, I do want to ask a couple of questions because as you are all stationed in Baghdad, I think it's important to talk about the relationship with regards to the KRI or to the KRG. Madam Ambassador, my question to you is that, recently that between the political parties, tensions have gone up, unfortunately, and then what's happening is that it is definitely affecting what the U.S.'s priorities can be in the KRI. So I just wanted to hear about the MOU that was signed back in September with between the Defense Ministry and the Department of Defense, and the Ministry of Peshmerga, and how you view that, and what do you think the best way forward would be in order to implement this memorandum of understanding?
Thanks. Thank you for the question. I first want to start, as I usually do, kind of at the 65,000-foot policy level, because you asked a very specific question about the MOU for Peshmerga, and I'll get there. But I think what's really important in the beginning of your question, which is about tensions between the various parties in here, and I think it's important that, first of all, the United States has really strong bonds with the IKR. So we want to be a really good partner in, again, bringing the parties together and working for coming back to a strong Kurdish unity. You may ask, why is that? Well, because it's really vital for advancing our interests and also Kurdish interests, not just here, but also in Iraq. We do have a long agenda to pursue on that. We want to obviously increase security cooperation, and this MOU is part of that, and I'll get into some details. We also want to support anti-corruption measures and economic reforms. Again, this is a rich region. It is a vibrant region. It is a region that believes in investment, in economic growth, and of course we want to make sure that we can do that across this region. We also want to advance human rights and democracy. I think my colleagues here made very strong points about that. We are 100% with them in the importance. We come from societies of that. Iraqi Kurdistan has made historically very important strides on that, and we, unity is an important part of keeping those democratic values and democratic processes in place and working for the region here. Not to mention the fact that it also can be a very good example to the region in terms of how things can work. Again, we are coming back to something that is I wouldn't say relatively new on the agenda, but certainly has a really renewed focus by everybody across the world, and that is climate change. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to mitigate it? How are we going to bring the international community together? And then immediately from that broader perspective, how do you bring it down to exactly what do you do in a region, what do you do in a city, what do you do in the rural areas? Those are really critical. We're all in this, we're all trying to figure out answers, and it's going to take everybody together, united, and working toward a very similar goal. Not everybody agrees how to do it, or if it's even real, and we don't have to debate that point, but the reality is all countries have been hit one way or another with climate change. So this is something very important. We also want to continue to support our educational exchanges and the cultural heritage preservation that we do here. So it is, in order for us to achieve and be successful in this agenda with in the IKR, we need everyone to be, not to always agree, but certainly to have to be able to work together and find the solutions to these common challenges. So again, we would like to see parties that come together, leverage their position also, which will be very important for this region, to leverage their position in Baghdad with this new government. You're much stronger in representing your interests as a united voice than a hugely fractious voice. Let me turn to finally the question about the MOU. I think, first of all, the MOU is a huge sign that we are committed to supporting a modern and efficient and effective force as part of the Iraqi security forces. And I think this new government, it will have a challenge in front of them to really build those security forces and making sure they are not just under the one commander-in-chief, and also support the security of Iraq as a whole. They have a lot of work on that. But again, we are doing our part with the through the reforms that we are working through with the Peshmerga that we signed just at the end of September, actually. Yeah. So we're looking forward to continuing our work on that. We've agreed together to do it, and we're looking again to work on that. It's a very important component to our work on enduring defeat of ISIS. The ISIS remnants are still here. We need to continue to stay as a united front against that.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. I am actually going to stay on the security front. Italy, since May, you took the presidency of NATO, and I think that many of Iraq, unfortunately, in all the conversations we have had, with the exception of very, very few comments that are made about climate change, let's say, or so on, and there's a whole section on climate change that we'll get to. But security always seems to be the top topic when people are talking about Iraq and talking about Iraq's role in the region, etc. But as NATO, I think you're very well positioned to be able to help us in terms of understanding that, what are NATO's plans moving forward for Iraq? NATO has actually trained thousands of Peshmergas and security forces, Iraqi security forces, etc. But it seems that are we really there to have a professional force that can protect the borders of Iraq. I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts on this are.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tanya. On the security front, we have now this responsibility to lead the NATO mission in Iraq, which we take very seriously. It's very important, as you said. Since May, there is an Italian commander and an Italian contingent within the NATO mission, which has grown bigger. And this is very important. And we are here as Italy also. We are one of the main contributors to the global coalition in the fight against Daesh. And also at the bilateral level, we have done this for a number of years. And actually, we trained several thousands of Iraqi security forces and Peshmerga. The role of NATO and the coalition, I think, is very important because we want to support the Iraqi security forces and the Kurdish security forces to develop their abilities. And so we do this through advising, to training, capacity building. And this is a very important job, not an easy one, but security sector reform is one of the pillars of a functioning, stable democracy. So this is very important, and I think it's key to strengthen Iraqi sovereignty and territorial integrity.
I want to stop at the word sovereignty, and this is interesting that you bring this up. Unfortunately, as we are seeing that Iraq's sovereignty is being attacked almost on a daily basis from neighboring countries, and one of them being a NATO member. I think that it's important for us to stop at this, and I would be really interested in hearing that, your leadership in NATO and what can you do in order to help maintain this Iraqi sovereignty that is not being endangered by our neighboring countries?
This is a very important subject, and of course, NATO is here precisely to help Iraq in this. Of course, the weaker the forces here, the more difficult it is also to protect your territorial integrity. So we think that this is a very important way to help out Iraq. Of course, this is a developing situation, and we have to see it in a perspective. But I'm very confident that the situation can improve and that our presence will be important in this regard.
Okay. Great.
If you allow me a further comment.
Yes.
Of course, security cooperation is very important, and as I said, we are active in this. Let me say that my mandate here is also to support Iraq in so many different ways, going beyond that.
Yeah.
And so we have a very important economic presence, development cooperation, and also cultural, which I think is very, very important. We have quite a number of archaeological missions in this country. And so I think this is something, along all the challenges that we have in Iraq, sometimes gets overlooked, but culture and cultural heritage.
I was actually going to ask you about that, especially the archaeological contributions and what Italy is doing in terms of helping Iraq. I think it's very important for us to acknowledge this, and I would like you to talk a little bit about that, because especially with all this rich heritage that we do have in the country that unfortunately we have not been able to uncover. If you can take a couple of minutes to talk about that, I think that's very important for us.
No, with pleasure. 2 days ago, I went to visit an Italian archaeological mission from the University of Milan, which is 30 kilometers from Erbil in the Erbil plain. They are excavating to tell. And what they are discovering is amazing, simply amazing. I mean, they found in these mounds of 25 meters high, 24 levels of settlement going back 8,000 years. And that's the amazing history and heritage of this country. So I think this is something where very much you can build the Iraqi identity. I mean, this historic depth that Iraq has, this is unique. This is not something that, actually only a few countries can claim this. I think my country is well suited to help Iraq in this. We have also a very rich archaeological and cultural heritage. Yes. And it's not a coincidence that we have here almost 20 archaeological missions all over the country. Yeah. 8 of them in 18 total, 8 of them in Kurdistan. And so, I mean, this is a very important subject, something where we should work at also for the future, because the most important thing is to preserve this, to be aware of this heritage that you have, and then you need to preserve it, and then you can put it into value.
I think definitely there are many things that we can learn in terms of investing in this heritage that we do have, and Italy is a prime example where it can be quite beneficial for us, especially as now what's happening is there is actually a shift from the humanitarian to the development, and a lot of European countries and Western countries as well. They're talking more about in terms of actual development of the state institutions, capacity building, and so on. So I would be interested in hearing from you, Mr. Ambassador, is that in terms of integrating the move or the transition from a humanitarian response to a development response, what are your strategic objectives moving forward to ensure that Iraq's internal obligations are being met towards its vulnerable constituents, but also ensuring that we are not endangering or we are not jeopardizing our dynamics and relationship with our neighbors and also with the European countries. So I think it's a loaded question. It's big, but I think it's important for us to understand that this shift that is happening, what we're calling the localization process that is taking place, and this movement towards the development and ensuring that we have the state institutions in place, etc., to ensure a smooth transition. I think the EU can definitely play a role in that, and I would be interested in hearing what has been done in terms of preparing the Iraqi state to be able to take on that transition.
Sure, quite a wide, and I'm just wondering how to answer this in a snappy way. Firstly, of course, the EU is a great proponent of the so-called nexusing, which basically means that we are very keen to look at these different strands of action as a whole, and then try to make sure that the humanitarian meets the development efforts. And of course, I mean, you've seen precisely, I mean, there has been quite a lot of funding coming from us for the humanitarian purposes. We are still continuing this, obviously, for instance, for the IDPs and refugees who are resident here in the Kurdistan region. But we've also made significant contributions to the stabilization effort in the liberated areas further south. And I should probably pay tribute also to Germany, which has been the lead nation on stabilization. Now, these stabilization efforts are coming to a close precisely because, of course, it is time for the Iraqi government to actually take responsibility for these actions. And as a result, we are also shifting the focus of our efforts to technical assistance, which will then enable Iraq to use its own resources better. And I have to say that this has not been entirely without complications. We have been quite involved in many critical sectors like public finance management, but sometimes the progress hasn't been quite as fast as we may have hoped. And of course, this is something that we want to tackle with the new government. I think the initial, let's say, tendencies or the themes that the Prime Minister al-Sudani has taken up are the right ones. And of course, we hope to work with him and his cabinet in order to make further progress. We also, of course, I should say, work with our friends through the Iraqi Economic Contact Group. And of course, we are trying to provide the best advice possible to the government as far as these issues are concerned.
Thank you. And yesterday we actually had the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan region here on the panel, and it was one of the points that he talked about, and he said where the technical assistance is very important. So this just shows the difference in terms of how willing and how ready the KRG is to be able to learn and to improve its institutions, hopefully. With that, I'm actually going to open the floor to questions from the audience. I see many hands, but I will take 3 or 4 questions at a time, if that's okay with you guys, and then we'll go back for another round of questions. I'm going to start from the back here. Gazan Khan.
Good morning. I'm Nazem Bajikhani, agenda expert, teaching at Sciences Po in Paris and advising KRI President on gender and higher education. The KRG has conducted many legal reforms in the past in an attempt to ensure women's rights in this region. And the reforms were done following consultancy with various groups, including Islamic scholars and also faith leaders. One of these laws concerned the Iraqi Personal Status Code of 1959 in relation to divorce, giving women some rights to divorce and also limiting the circumstances under which a man can divorce his wife. Now, you may be aware that some Islamist group members filed a lawsuit at the Iraqi Federal Court against the KRI Parliament, saying that the law is not compatible with the Sharia law. I would like to hear your stance on that. Thank you.
Thank you. This young lady here, actually, if we can, check the qawid. Okay, I'll try and get to as many of you as possible, I promise. But please, if you have a question, make sure you direct it to the person, and just very briefly.
Thank you, Pam Silvers, the reporter of the Ruda Media Network. I just have 2 questions for the lady, the United States ambassador. My first question is about that Iran has repeatedly threatened Erbil in recent months. And according to the Saudi Arabia's intelligence, that Iran wants to attack Erbil again. So how the United States protects KRG from the foreign attacks? And my second question is about the freedom of expression. What do you think about the freedom of expression in this region, I mean the KRG?
Thank you. This lady here in the green dress. Yes, all the ladies first.
Thank you. Kurdistan, it's my name. I graduated of the Iraqi leadership's fellows. I have 3 questions. The first one for Ms. Alina. As you mentioned that Iraq is one of the strategic partner. So I want to know how you will, or how US will keep that partnership, even we know that the balance of power is changing and the system also is becoming a multipolar. And for Mr. Varjola, right? Okay. During the last month, as we saw that there is some tensions between France and Germany. And yes, and that maybe will impact of the European Union's foreign policy. I want to know how the European will make a balance of that policy, foreign policy, and thus the tension between both who are the superpower of European Union and who are taking a power will impact the relationship or will impact the European Union policy toward Iraq. Okay. And all of you mentioned about the investing and how it's and why and it's so important, of course. Okay. I want to ask what kind of investment you are focusing on it, and does those investment will include humanitarian and human resource investment? Because as we know, human and peoples are more important than any other things.
Thank you. Last question. Very brief.
Okay. As we know, European Union, as a countries, because they're facing COVID-19, there's many places they need peoples to work, okay? And youth in Iraq, they have a capability of that. Why they will not cooperate with each other to make a balance? Many youth worked in Europe.
Good question. And that kind of could probably help the legal migration, the issue that you may have. I'm going to take a couple more before I go to the panelists. We'll have this gentleman right here and this gentleman, these two in the middle here. I'll get to you, promise.
مرحبا، عمار سرحان من البصرة. طبعا بعد تظاهرات 2018 بثورة الماء ضد الأحزاب.
دقيقة بس خلونا السماعات حتى يقدرون يسمعوا. اوكي، جايز سيت؟ يا تفضل.
عمار سرحان، حد خريجي من قادة العراق ورئيس منظمة بصرة الثقافة الفيدرالية. بعد تظاهرات 2018 ضد الأحزاب والمطالبة بالماء للبصرة، أصبح التحريض ضد الشهيدة ريهام يعقوب من قبل إعلامي الميليشيات والأحزاب. وقتلت الشهيدة ريهام لأجل صورة مع القنصل الأمريكي بمؤتمر حول المرأة، وهربت القنصلية الأمريكية من البصرة. هل هو اعتراف وانسحاب من الجنوب عموما، وحتى بغداد يعني فترة من فترات انغلقت السفارة الأمريكية؟ ليش ما نشوف عقوبات اقتصادية على الأحزاب اللي اليوم تتعاملون وياهم، وحررتوا العراق وسلمتوها إلى الأحزاب اللي تابعة إلى
وصلت الفكرة.
الأحزاب. بس سؤال ثاني، لماذا لا تضغط الولايات المتحدة وعندها التزامات؟ هذا النظام السياسي اللي موجود بالدستور غير مطبق. احنا قدمنا استفتاء ب 2018 ب 2015 تحججت المفوضية بعدم وجود الأموال والحكومة العراقية. لماذا لا تلتزم الولايات المتحدة بالضغط على الحكومة العراقية باتجاه تطبيق الدستور والقانون؟
شكرا. يلا اوكي.
Thanks dear Tanya, Faris Kati, Yazidi Academic. My question is for all the three ambassadors. As you know, after 8 years of ISIS attack on Sinjar city, actually there is no real governmental plan of rehabilitation and rebuilding. The infrastructure is mostly destroyed. No, the mass graves are not treated. More than 3,000 kidnapped girls and women are still not survived, and about 300,000 displaced people in the IDPs camps. The only things being done under the supervision and influence of the United Nations was the Baghdad and Kurdistan region or Erbil agreement, but it's also remained as a drafted paper with no execution on the ground. So where are you from the Yazidi case and from the situation of Sinjar?
Okay.
Do you have any plan Is it within your priorities or not, and why?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take this gentleman that is standing. He has a burning question, so let's hear it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. My question is to Excellency Ambassador Romanowski. My name is Sherwan Mustafa from IPBL, Iraqi Private Banks Leagues. In fact, my question concerns the great projects that held by USAID since 2003 till now for developing economy. In fact, USAID have many projects around the world. Nowadays, we are ongoing for projects called ALPI, Activating Lending Program in Iraq. Before 2 days, we make a big forum in Baghdad. I would like to ask Mrs. Romanowski, how do you see the impact of USAID projects? What's the extent? Although we always refer to Marshall projects that rebuilt Europe after the Second War. How do you see their impact on Iraq? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, I think we got I think the first round of questions, we'll go back to the panelists and then I'll come back to the audience and take another round of questions. Many of the questions were actually pointed at you, so I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Tanya. Let me try and answer a few of them anyway. I think there was a question on impact. Well, I'll go backwards if I can. On the impact of USAID projects here across Iraq. I think the impact. I will grant you one observation and agree with you that we have not done as good a job of advertising and informing the Iraqi public about the USAID projects. I agree. If that's the message you were sending, I completely agree with you. We need to do more about highlighting what USAID has done. But without going through a long laundry list, I will say that from the very beginning, USAID has done a lot of projects in agriculture. For example, helping farmers increase their crops, teach them how to and show them how you're more efficient with water, you're more efficient with irrigation, so that's one area. Another area that AID has done tremendous work in is, of course, in the area of stabilization, when AID had a lot of the work that they were doing also in stabilization. I would say most recently, to your point on the conference that they hosted I think at June, July, where they were talking about access to finance. Again, this is an effort to inform and educate and bring to light opportunities for accessing finance and how small and business enterprises can do that. The USAID, frankly, has also been very involved in supporting the creation of what we call now workspaces to try to encourage young entrepreneurs to come together and be creative, innovative, give them the kind of resources, including, laptops and internet access and trainings in places like the station. I think we did one here. I can't remember the name, but somebody will help me. But you're right. So AID has been working across the spectrum, including in humanitarian assistance here, and in training women on women's entrepreneurship, and empowerment. So we've done a lot. We are looking at how we can better advertise and highlight the successes without putting the participants in a situation that they would feel uncomfortable. But that is, we're going to continue to do a lot of that work. You talked a little bit, somebody asked a little bit about, let me go to the geostrategic. There was a question, excuse me if I summarize it, but on how are we going to keep these partnerships with the changing geostrategic framework here. I would say a couple things, make a couple of observations. One, first of all, those strategic partnerships have been around a long time and are based on, frankly, and continue to be based on mutual interests. There is room for others to come and help support the interests of the countries in this region. I'm speaking geostrategically. At the same time, those who want to come and undermine this region's stability is not in our interest, nor is it in the interest of our partners. So I don't see that being as much of a challenge as some do. I think everyone needs to think about what, how you build those partnerships. Are those partnerships built truly on mutual interest? Some countries come with a much different agenda and much different conditions under which they create these partnerships. But I don't see the United States going away and not looking for increasing partnerships. Let me talk a little bit about freedom of expression in KRG, and then I'm going to turn it over to my other colleagues to answer the questions. I would say that on freedom of expression, that is critical to the United States. We see this as a foundation for democracy. We have spoken out publicly and called out governments and institutions that arrest journalists, imprison journalists, reduce access to internet in the region, and to intimidate journalists. I would say we have called it out. We also, as a positive step toward ensuring that journalists are looking at and ensuring that they provide accurate, timely, and good information, we also do a lot of training with journalists, and we have programs that we send journalists to the United States and see how what the parameters and principles of freedom of expression are in the United States. So we do our part, and we do call out countries that where it starts to slip and where there are specific cases. So I'm going to let others answer some of that long list of questions.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to go to Ambassador Varjola about, especially there was a couple of questions that were specific to the EU. I'd like you to speak about them, then we'll come to you if you have a couple of minutes for comments on what was asked.
Sure. I think the first one was about France and Germany bickering and this being a problem for Europe. Well, I think some of you may have been reading the Financial Times, which said that indeed France and Germany have been bickering. Now, have I read this same headline like times and times again? Well, I have. What has been the result? Well, I'm just here to tell you that the Franco-German motor is alive and well. Of course, it's also interesting that I'm actually standing in for the German ambassador, who would have told you the same thing. Of course, all these long-term relationships, they have their difficult moments. I mean, countries come from different places and they have different interests. The European Union is about making compromises, and I think that that's also a bit of a lesson for Iraq itself. So certainly, I mean, maybe Maurizio will want to say a few words more about the member states, because of course the European Union is much more than its member states. I mean, we have created this whole institutional machinery in order to sort out these differences, and the fact is that the European Union is just moving forward. There was a question on the investment. I believe that was related to education. We're actually having fairly big programs in the vocational training space. Not so much on the university side of things, but this, I mean, higher degrees, higher studies, but rather vocational training, because this has been something that has been missing a bit. On the issue of migration, absolutely our objective, I mean, medium-term objective is actually to open avenues for legal migration. Fact is that Europe actually needs migrants because of its demographics. And our hope is that we can work with the government that's incoming to actually establish some sort of normality. Iraq is a rich country. It has a lot of young, dynamic people. And of course, you know, basically those young people need to be able to travel. I mean, and if they can't do it legally, then, you know, some might take the illegal route. But certainly our long-term objective remains to put this on a sound footing. At the moment, this may not be the case, but this remains the medium-term objective. Yeah, I think I'll stop at that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. I will add to what Ambassador Varjola said on the European Union. You read, I mean, all the time on international press about, Franco-German bickering and the problems the European Union is having on this and that. And that's because, I mean, everything we do in the European Union is out in the open. I mean, and of course, you know, this is a union of 27 member states. So to find an agreement on, you know, all kinds of issues, because the union is basically on everything, on all the panoply of statecraft, difficult, sensitive subjects, it's not easy. Yeah. And of course, the big member states take centerfold. But at the end of the day, the result is that we find an agreement. You know, you have European councils every 3 months or even more, and then at the end of the night they come out with the consensus, with an agreement, sometimes difficult, but it's there, and as Ville said, we're moving forward.
Yes.
Sometimes, which is overlooked, because, you know, good news, it's not real news, but the European Union is there, I would say, alive and kicking. And maybe there was a question on humanitarian investment.
Yes.
On this, I would like to say that we also have a number of programs, very important. The humanitarian now is, you know, going a bit, you know, down in the scale of priorities compared to long-term development cooperation. But of course, it's still very important, especially in the KRI, where we have a lot of IDP and refugee camps.
1.2
and so
million.
Italy, along with the European Union and other European countries, and of course international partners, is very active in this. We have a number of programs for the population in the camps, especially targeting vulnerable communities, including women, minorities, including Yazidis, for example, which were mentioned. So I would like just to say that this is very much still a focus of our action, and we will continue to be active in this.
Yeah, I think this is important. If we can just stop at this for a couple of minutes, is that because of the fact that, you know, quite frankly, is the Iraqi government able to handle the humanitarian crisis that we have? You know, what we have been hearing from a lot of contributing states is they're saying, you know, the price of oil has gone up, they've closed down the camps in the rest of the country with the exception of the KRI, where the camps are still open. So, you know, everybody's gone back to their place of where they came from, you know, so we don't have an IDP problem pretty much in Iraq, which unfortunately we know is not the truth. And quite frankly, I'm going to make this as a statement that, you know, definitely the Iraqi government does not have the capacity or the capability to be able to handle this humanitarian situation, because if they had, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I think when we talk about supporting the development of the state and the institutions, it's very, very important to make this one of the main points to help the Iraqi institutions to be able to handle these crises that are happening, because it's going to continue to happen. We saw it since even pre-2003, you had the Arabization process where many people, we had an IDP crisis in the Kurdistan region. Many people from the disputed areas were, sent to Kurdistan region. It then happened again in 2003, and then it happened again in 2005, 6 or 7, and so on. So it's an ongoing problem. So just saying that, Iraq is, things have gotten better and ISIS is gone, definitely that's not the answer. And unfortunately, that is something we heard from the UN yesterday. So, yeah.
I would just like to add that, of course, we are also aware of the issues around IDPs. We have, I wouldn't say, probably a dozen programs which actually directly or indirectly address the issues of those people. In addition, we're actually planning a major investment into social protection, precisely for the reasons that you mentioned. I would add that because there was also a question about gender.
Yes.
It's also something that every single project of ours, before it gets its approval, has to be gender sensitive and has to promote gender equality. And so this is what we do on the programming level. So we will make sure that all of these projects that we have, they actually contribute towards that aim. And of course, any human rights is in general is an ongoing discussion with all of our interlocutors that we have, and of course, you can rest assured that these agendas are on the table every single time we meet some of your political leaders.
Great. Go ahead.
In case people think that I'm ducking the softball, the hardball questions, I just want to do a sort of a two-finger intervention on the IDPs and the issue of Yazidis. I just wanted to say that there has been a little bit of a hiatus in the efforts to implement the Sinjar agreement, and I think this is something we want to make sure that we pick up with the new government. And then there was also a question about Iranian attacks on the IKR.
Yeah.
And just want to not only just in the IKR, I would also say in the region at large, where we have very strongly condemned the Iranian attacks on Iraq's sovereignty, IKR sovereignty, and around, and that we are very concerned about this the threat picture here, and that we work very closely through our diplomatic and military and obviously other channels with our partners here to be extremely vigilant about this situation. So.
Okay, great. I am very sorry. I've gotten the no, don't go over time, mark, so I will not be able to take any more questions. I am very, very sorry about that. I know I said I'll try and get as many of you